Gopi Janabalabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janabalabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shishi Gauranitai ki jai. Shishi Radha Govinda Madhava ki jai. Shishi Krishna Balaram ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Grang, all glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Vidaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Devi, Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvasesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, good to see you all. Hare Krishna, where are we reading from?
First canto, 13th chapter, verse number 21.
21. We may need a French translation. Anybody need French translation? Yeah. God, you can give it a Hare Krishna. Everyone else is okay? We just got back last night from a journey to the south of France. We were primary purpose, of course there were other purposes, but primary was to deliver these little deities of Srila Prabhupada to various Srila Prabhupada initiated disciples in the south of France. We distributed 18 of these little murtis to various devotees in different parts of the south of France, mostly in the Mayapur district, but others also near Périgueux, we pronounce it Périgueux, and Agen, something like that. And like that, it was very enlivening, very inspiring. The first devotee we met has been a long time. He's been away from the association of devotees. We didn't even know if he would receive us. But we were hesitant, but he invited us in. And when he saw, what did he say when he saw Srila Prabhupada? He held the deity like this, and he said, "My dear spiritual master." It was so touching. Other devotees were crying. Even people who'd never heard of Krishna consciousness started crying. the wives or husbands. It's very amazing. So we're reading text number 21 of the 13th chapter of the 10th canto. The chapter is entitled Brahma Stealing the Boys and Calves. And this, as we know, is the last chapter where Srila Prabhupada personally translated and commented upon in his great service to the universe by presenting the Srimad Bhagavatam, at least for the earth planet, in the English language. But it's benefiting the whole universe. So text number 21. Kindly repeat. Tat tat vatsan. Is on the board? Pritak. Nitva. Tat tat goshte. Nivesha. Saha. Tat tatatma. Abhavat. Rajan. Tat tat sadma. Pravishtavan. Tat tad vatsan pritanitva. Tat tad goshte niveshasaha. Tat tad atma pavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Tat tad vitvatsan pritanitva. Tat tad goshte niveshasaha. Tat tad atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Tat tad vatsan pritanitva. Tat tad goshte niveshasaha. Tat tad atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Tat tat goshte niveshasaha. Tat tat atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Tat tat vatsan pritanitva. Tat tat goshte niveshasaha. Tat tat atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma bhavishtavan. Tat tat vatsan pritanitva. Tat tat goshte niveshasaha. Tat tat atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Ladies. Tat tat vatsan pritanitva. Tat tat goshte niveshasaha. Tat tat atma bhavadrajangs. Tat tat sadma pavishtavan. Tat tat vatsan. The calves which belonged to different cows.
which belongs to the different cows.
Pritak, separately.
Separately.
Nitva,
Nitva,
bringing.
bringing.
Tat tat goshte,
Tatat Goshte,
to their respective cowsheds.
their respective cowsheds.
Nivesha,
Nivesha,
entering.
entering.
Saha,
Saha,
Krishna.
Krishna.
Tat tat atma,
Tatat Atma,
as originally different individual souls. Abhavat,
Abhava,
he expanded himself in that way.
expanded himself in that way.
Rajan,
Raja,
O king Parikshit.
okay, Parikshit.
Tat tat sadma,
Tatat Atma,
their respective houses.
their respective houses.
Pravistavan,
Pravistavan,
entered.
entered.
Krishna thus entered everywhere.
Krishna thus entered everywhere.
Translation, a short purport by Srila Prabhupada. O Maharaj Parikshit, Krishna, who had divided himself as different calves and also as different cowherd boys, entered different cowsheds as the calves, and then different homes as different boys. Purport: Krishna had many, many friends, of whom Sridama, Sudama, and Subal were prominent. Thus Krishna himself became Sridama, Sudama, and Subala, and entered their respective houses with their respective calves. So this amazing pastime of Krishna's expanding himself. Krishna has many kinds of expansions, of course. I don't know the technical term for this kind of expansion, maybe somebody does, where it is Krishna, he's Krishna himself, but he appears differently. Krishna expands himself sometimes in identical forms, like in the Rasa Leela, or in other cases, even during Rasa Yatra, Lord Chaitanya expanded himself. And then he has other expansions, which are various functional expansions, as Lord Vishnu, or the Chaturvyu, the Narayan expansions, and energetic expansions. So many different types of expansions are there described. Sometimes possessing the fullness of Krishna. They're all Krishna. Actually, everything is an expansion of Krishna. And sometimes they may manifest certain degree of those unlimited qualities, apparently, for a certain purpose. And sometimes the Lord enters in a potential form into, always actually, into living entities to empower them in various ways. Right from Lord Brahma to the ant, everyone is empowered in some way or another to act in certain ways, to have certain capacity. But this is a very unique expansion. He also expands from the material point of view, in his form of his energy, but it's actually him himself in the form of deities, pictures, sound vibration, so many ways. The Lord is present everywhere. As he enters everywhere, he's entered everywhere into the atoms as the super soul. He's everywhere. We may not be able to see him. So he also has various kinds of energetic expansions which are there to facilitate his pastimes. In this particular case, the expansions of the Lord are very unique. I mean, sometimes in this world a person may try to disguise themselves as somebody else. Perhaps as children we played like that sometimes. But it doesn't take long to recognize they're not actually that person. They don't have the same psychological nature. Jai Krishna Param, Radha Govinda Madhava Gaunitai. They're different. It's an imitation. It's not the real thing. Even yogis may, sometimes it's said, can expand their form up to 9 times. But they're not individuals as such. They're just one person who acts in the same way in each 9 forms. Unlike Krishna, another example is when a different kind of expansion, you could say, when Krishna expands himself in Dwarka. 16,108 queens. Krishna expands himself to, they're all doing different things. When Narada Muni visited Dwarka, he was amazed to see how that same Krishna appeared to be engaged differently in each and every palace simultaneously. But it's the same Krishna. This is the incomparable potency of Godhead. Incomparable. In this world, when people try to disguise themselves, it's just an illusion. Krishna's expansions are reality. In this material world, it's the influence of the material energy that one cannot recognize, the Mahamaya potency, the Lord's potencies, that covers. Are you translating or not?
She said she doesn't need it anymore.
Doesn't need any
I
more.
can hear you very well, but now with the microphone.
Oh, wonderful. So Mahamaya, in this world, she causes us to not see Krishna, to think it's something else other than Krishna. The art of Krishna consciousness, there's a process, but the result of that process is to be able to see a certain step. Of course, there's a higher level, but in this world, to see how Krishna's potencies are working in everything, and to feel his presence all the time. We may not be experiencing that. We're still attracted or seeing ourselves in the center and seeing the world in relationship to ourselves. We're seeing separately from Krishna. The process of devotional service is to see everything in relationship with Krishna. Whatever it is, even karma, everything, all the objects of this world. So, it's Krishna's energy. The different paths that people choose is the Lord's reciprocation with them. Their desire and their karma combined, Krishna reciprocates. As he says in the Bhagavad Gita, what is that verse? Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Huh? What's the first line? Tak paratam nanyat, is that the one? Kinti dasti dhananjaya. Mahisava midam sute niganayuga sute maniganayuga. But everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Everyone follows my path in all respects. That's usually misunderstood, misinterpreted. It doesn't mean that whatever path you follow leads to the same thing exactly. It's like you have in this country many roads, like everywhere. Not every path, they're all, basically speaking, government roads, you could say. Roads provided by the government, maybe through other agents, but basically it's like that. They're all the government roads. You can't make your own road and start, can't do that. They're all the government's roads. But they don't all go to the same place. Some are dead ends. What do you call it? Cul-de-sac? Is that a French term? In English they say cul-de-sac. A road that, it doesn't go anywhere. It comes to a stop. You have to go back again. Huh? In English, well, you say dead end, but they call it cul-de-sac in England. Cul-de-sac. It's a French saying. I don't know if you use the same term here, but it's a dead end. Some roads go north, some go west, some go east, some go this way, that way. Yeah, they're all government roads, but they don't all lead to the same place. So yeah, everything is ultimately the arrangement of the Lord, no matter what it is. He's reciprocating, you would say, with the individual soul, and providing what they're, in a sense, according to their karma, providing what they desire. But it's not our energy. We're not the proprietor. We don't make the mind, we don't make the brain, we don't make the intelligence, we don't make the products which we try to manipulate. We're just witnessing and thinking illusion. We're illusioned by the material energy, by Mahamaya. She has this potency of, first of all, covering us over with illusion, and then within that making us think, this is me and this is mine. This is the illusion of this world. So in the spiritual world there's another kind of illusion. Everything in this world has its counterpart in eternity in the spiritual world, called Yogamaya. Yogamaya brings you closer to Krishna. Mahamaya has this tendency to see things separately from Krishna. Yogamaya brings everything closer to Krishna. Although it may be another kind of, you could say, almost like not an illusion exactly, but a covering to enhance the loving exchange of not knowing that Krishna is God, thinking he's my child, my Krishna belongs to me. Transformative process is to understand we belong to Krishna in the material world. In the spiritual world, the different levels are there. On a higher level, that Krishna is mine. Just like here, the calves are going home to their various cow sheds, and the mothers are thinking, this is my calf. And they're licking the calf, feeding the calf. But that calf in this case is Krishna himself. Of course, all the residents, cows, calves, trees, birds, humans, whatever form they may appear in, are all unimpeded in their attraction to Krishna, you could say. But for various pastime reasons, in some cases, for the individuals coming into that relationship, they appear to have husbands, children, and so on. And there may be some identification there if they're not completely purified, absolutely unimpeded in their attraction to Krishna. But they're hankering, they would hanker some, that if only Krishna, because Mother Yasoda was the He is the eternal mother of the Lord. They would hanker for having Krishna as their son. The mood is Vatsalya Bhav, the parental affection. And you see that practically speaking, most mothers, I don't know about all, but most mothers automatically, when a new baby is there, even if it's not their baby, are attracted. And they want to hold the baby and, whatever. The natural attraction. So we can hardly imagine the attraction to baby Krishna, or Krishna as a young boy. The mothers were, all the other mothers in all the other gopis in Vrindavan, the elderly gopis particularly, of course, were hankering to have Krishna as their son. So Krishna desires to fulfill that. Although they didn't know he was their own son, he expanded, as you've already read. Not an ordinary expansion like that of the yogi, or even other expansions of Krishna. Because he takes on the exact, not just the dress, the color, the form of each and every cowherd boy. There are countless cowherd boys, by the way. There's not just three mentioned here, Sridham, Subal, and Sudama. There are countless cowherd boys. Can you imagine? Billions. It's not just, and a handful, maybe you can try to imitate a few people, but it's very limited effort. But Krishna didn't imitate, he simply expanded himself because everything comes from him. It's not difficult. It's difficult, impossible for us. But for him, it's not. Just by his will, it happens. So he expands himself, as the other cowherd boys, which we've heard, were apparently taken away by Krishna, by Brahma, and were out of sight. So Krishna, obviously, is not going to return to Vrindavan with none of his friends, with none of the calves, and simply tell everyone, I don't know what happened. They kind of disappeared. Maybe they fell into the Jamuna, got washed away. I don't know what happened to them. Don't worry about it. Why are you so attached? Obviously you can't do that. Everybody knows the effect of the loss of children, even on that level. It's all part of pastimes on a different level, you could say, but still it's there. So to satisfy Lord Brahma, who wanted to see the opulences of the Lord in full, to satisfy the mothers and the cows in Vrindavan, he expanded himself in exact forms of each and every calf and cowherd boy. That is inconceivable, I think it is anyway, from a material point of view. But that's one thing. But he also had exactly the same psychological or mental state of each of those boys, their nature. Each one had exactly the nature of the original boy or calf. So no one could recognize, even Balaram himself was perplexed. He wasn't there when this pastime happened. He didn't know what happened. He was also wondering what's going on. He couldn't work it out. Krishna, although he's a direct expansion of the Lord, for the Lord's pleasure, the pastime, he was also apparently bewildered. Nobody knew what was going on. But everyone's attraction by the arrangement of Yogamaya, everyone's attraction for Krishna was increasing unendingly. Not just to Krishna, but to their own sons and their own calves, because their sons and calves were Krishna himself. Everyone, all the children were all now direct forms of Krishna. although appearing like coward boys, gopas and gopis, or gopas and calves, the calves. And everyone was feeling such satisfaction that Krishna is my son, Krishna is my calf. Well, they weren't thinking like that, but he was. And they were feeling like that. And this is all going on by the mystic potency of the Lord. The nature of Yoga Maya, ever enhancing the pleasure of the Lord. And his Bhaktavatsalya is always his first intention of the Lord is how to please his devotees. We may wonder what he's doing to us. Sometimes we're not always so happy. Sometimes we're a little bewildered. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by the material energy. Sometimes we feel distress, anxiety, and fear sometimes. How is he reciprocating with us then? Well, generally speaking, we can understand we're not very advanced devotees. If we dare to call ourselves a devotee at all, we would prefer to call ourselves trying to become a servant of a devotee. A devotee is quite a high term, Prabhupada said. One time Burijan Prabhu wrote a Vyasa Puja homage in 1968, I think, his first one, to Prabhupada. And he wrote a poem, and it was, I don't know, I did see it once, but I don't remember it. But the last line said, "My dear Srila Prabhupada, I just want to become a devotee." It's a very simple poem. You can imagine, just been in the movement a month or so. Very simple. Srila Prabhupada, all I want to do is become a devotee. Prabhupada replied and said, "I very much appreciated your offering, but please, the last line, you have to change it. We're not qualified to be devotees. We're trying to become servants." That's what attracts Krishna. Srila Prabhupada would many times infer we should not try it necessary to see Krishna, but act in a way that Krishna will see us. Gopaswami Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, he'd read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we were reading and discussing the pastime of King Prataparuta a couple of days ago on Rathayatra Day, the Rathayatra festival in Toulouse. And we discussed this a little bit, how when King Prataparuta was sweeping the floor in front of Lord Jagannath, the king of Orissa, sweeping the floor with no false pride, he was considering this the greatest privilege to be engaged in the service of sweeping the floor for Lord Jagannath's pleasure. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noticed him. That was the turning point, you could say. The turning point in becoming, let's say, noticed by the Lord or achieving the favor of the Lord in the form of his association, his darshan, the opportunity to see him, if you want to call it that. The menial service without any expectation for the pleasure of the Lord. No conditions. At the moment, our devotional service tends to be somewhat mixed. We expect some kind of return in the sense of our own idea of return. Comfort, some reward, some recognition, some release from suffering, something or another, position. Recognition is a big thing for conditioned souls. Krishna consciousness means to recognize Krishna and see how things are going on in relationship with Krishna. The material world is in relationship with ourselves. It's going to be there in the conditioned stage, but we should try to be conscious, this has to change. We can't go back to Godhead. We can't get out of this material world as long as we're seeing ourselves in the center. One easy way of testing this is that we become offended when someone says something to us, or when we don't get what we want, or when someone asks us to do something we don't like. This is an easy way of measuring the fact that we're still self-centered, not Krishna-centered. How you respond. That's another topic of detail we won't get into. A devotee tenu kampam su samikshamanam punjana ivatma krita vipakam. He accepts and sees Krishna's hand working in everything. It doesn't mean the devotee doesn't act, or you could say, we're using the term devotee for a definitive purpose. He does, he may act, but he acts in relationship to Krishna, not in relationship to his own false ego, or their own false ego, their own conditional perspective. So it's all about changing our perception, changing how we see things and not what we see. Prabhupada was one time asked the question, what is the spiritual world like, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, this is the spiritual world, but you cannot see it, because our vision is covered. Premanjana chuta bhakti vilochanena santaksadeva vijayeshu vilokyanti. Our consciousness has to be with a salve of love of God. How does that develop? Well, as we were mentioning earlier, it doesn't seem like Krishna's Bhakta Vatsala. Okay, I'm not much of a Bhakta, but I'm trying. And I'm still suffering. So what is going on here is that Krishna is reciprocating in a way, as Sridhar Swami, the original commentator, on that verse actually, Tenu Kampam Susamikshana. The devotee doesn't complain. They just carry on taking shelter of Krishna, understanding that I'm getting a token reaction. You may see it more than that, but it is a token reaction for whatever is necessary. And just depends on Krishna, whatever you wish, my Lord. And Sridhar Swami explains that actually it's the exact necessity. The arrangement is a necessary arrangement of the Lord's to remove this mentality of seeing ourselves in the center instead of Krishna. So you may notice sometimes we respond differently, I know, but in some cases we see ourselves turning to the Lord when in difficulty. I have one disciple just now, actually wrote to them yesterday, I think, and you know that disciple, Suchitra, some of you know her in America. And they bought a new house, and they had a baby while they were living in the house, and they're using bore water, and they have all the filtration systems which are supposed to be first class, all certified and everything. After 2 years of living there, she was feeling some strange things happening on her skin and not feeling quite right. She went to the doctor, they did a blood test. She had 14 times over the maximum allowed arsenic in her body. Arsenic is a deadly poison. And they traced it back to the water. 2 years. The baby was also taking water from that well, obviously from her mother, his mother, in the womb, and when born, the whole family. I mean, it's quite a shocking affair. I mean, somehow or another in America there's no protection for such things. It's your problem. And what do they do? I mean, what can you do in a situation like that? I mean, you act. As Krishna says to Arjuna, you act. You try to find everything you can. First of all, to stop taking the poison. You can use this example on a bigger scale, by the way. We're all poisoned in different ways. Stop that. so they're not taking that water anymore. And secondly, you try to do something to, they call it detox, detoxify. And many devotees have been helping, many hundreds of devotees coming to help in various ways, professional help, various things. And just today they've gone down to tremendous reduction. It looks like they'll be okay. But it was quite a shock, because, when you have that, you may not die directly from that, but it causes all kinds of other things. And but Krishna says, Arjuna, perform your duty, but be conscious of me. Depend always upon me. If you forget me, you'll be lost. So they were very conscious of taking shelter of Krishna, knowing that ultimately we can only try our best, but ultimately everything depends upon Krishna. So sometimes these situations help us. You have no choice. There's nothing really. We do our best. One time Radhanath Maharaj, he was in, but before he met Srila Prabhupada, picked him. Before that, he was also like a renunciate in many ways in Vrindavan, and he had a friend in Varshan, one Babaji or something who lived in Varshan. He went there to see him, and you can't imagine what it was like 55 years ago compared to today in Vrindavan. Some of you may have gone to Vrindavan. We were discussing in this last few days how Vrindavan was, even 25 years ago, what we see as Vrindavan. Again, what do we see as our conditional vision? How different it looks from today. There were no hotels. The first hotel, there were some very small guest houses in the town, small ones. The first real one that came up was the MVT. Well, the guest house in the Krishna Bharan temple was like the Ritz hotel of Vrindavan when it came up. It's nothing now in one sense. When MVT came up, that was it. It was all over. It's like, wow. And then boom, everything expanded like rockets in the last 25 years. In every direction, well, not in every, but all the way out towards the main highway is practically developed. Cars, lorries, trucks, buses, motorbikes. Sometimes you can't cross the road practically. You have to risk your life to cross the road now. The only thing you see during the day might be one bullock cart. Maybe one, maybe none. Couple of people walking by once every hour or two on that road going out, Chattikar. There was one bus a day, and one maybe two, one in the morning, one in the evening, I think, from Delhi. And that was it on that road. Taxis, very rare, only if a rich person was coming or an ISKCON devotee was coming. And even the ISKCON devotees didn't take. We took tungas. Tungas, a horse cart. So on the back of a horse cart, or a cycling rickshaw all the way from the tourist station. It takes an hour and a half. It's changed a little bit since then. We were talking about that. You look at the old pictures, you don't know where it is hardly. Where's that? Prabhupada walking along that road. There's nothing but fields all around, and nobody else except for him and a few disciples. No traffic whatsoever. Maybe one or two people, one field, one or two people walking on the road. Nothing much. Anyway, he went to Varshan. It was more like a jungle then. Much of Vrindavan was like a jungle. Not like, jungle like you may envision in Burma or Laos exactly, but, vegetation everywhere. Trees. Birds, peacocks, everywhere. The monkeys didn't bother you much in those days. They didn't need to. They had plenty of fruit in the trees. There were so many trees, and they didn't need to worry. Now, of course, they have no trees left. We've cut them all down to put up our skyscrapers. So he went there. He went to visit his friend, and Badnath heard that there was a tiger in. They used to have tigers there. There was a tiger roaming around in the forest just next to where this Babaji was in Varsha. And people were on guard all the time. So he went to see him. And the Babaji had a stick there. And Radhanath, Richard, I think his name, whatever his name was, said, "Don't you know there's a tiger nearby? It's dangerous around here." I said, "Yes." "Why are you staying?" "No problem, I've got a stick." He said, "Do you think the stick will help?" I said, "No. But at least we have to do our part and show that we're acting." He had nothing else, he couldn't get anything else. I said, he depended on Krishna, but he still had his stick. So we may have to do some practical things, look after our health, and do things, react to irreligious behavior in the appropriate way. But ultimately, these things aren't going on by chance. There's no one to blame except for ourselves. Nobody. As we said the other day, you're not a failure until you start blaming others. You're a complete failure once you start blaming others. You miss the thread. Miss the point of Krishna consciousness, at least. But we still have to act. I mean, if someone does something, inappropriate, that has to be dealt with. But we're not necessarily blaming the person. We understand there's a karmic reaction. For a devotee, it's not the same as a normal karma. It's one, if we're feeling happy, we're getting freed from whatever token good reactions we have, and if we're feeling some stress, we're becoming freed of any bad karmic token reactions we have. But whatever it is, Sridhar Swami says, it's to remove the mentality which is causing us to be in this world of karma, to remove it, and start to let go of trying to, control Krishna's energy. Whether it's our mind, or whether it's our intellect, whatever it is. Of course, we try to use our mind in service of Krishna. But ultimately, what can we do? Bhakti Vinod Thakur says, it is impossible for the conditioned soul to control the mind's tendencies to be, wavering. It's not possible. But we have to have the desire. Then we make our effort, we have the desire, but what can we do? Material energy is very powerful, what can we do? We're very small. But those who surrender unto me can cross beyond it. It's Krishna who picks us up. It's Krishna who helps us, but we have to have the desire. If we don't have the desire, he's not going to force it on us. Other devotees may try, but we still react. We don't realize what's in our really self-interest, because we're still identifying with our body and mind as the self. So then he says, only by the only way that we can get free of this illusion of distraction to the objects around us. We're thinking nice, attracted to this, attracted to that, is by the mercy of the Lord. So therefore we have to pray for that mercy. Take shelter of Krishna. We try our best and take shelter of Krishna. And even if it externally appears to be, let's say, not what one would normally judge as a good effect, but if internally it causes us to take shelter of Krishna, the good effect is there. The proper effect. We're taking shelter of Krishna. Ultimately, anyway, this body is going to fade out. Some of us are already, whatever, we don't know how many more legs we're going to be, steps we're going to be able to take. Everyone's got a limit. And some of us are probably taken a lot of steps and we may not have so many left. Try to make those steps towards Krishna, not just to satisfy our separatist desires. Find out how we can see Krishna in every situation. Practical Krishna consciousness. You don't have to necessarily change the situation. We have to change how we see it. To change a situation, that will go on automatically, you could say, by Krishna's arrangement. Our part is desiring to change the way we see things. Hare Krishna. So this is on a higher platform, this is on the spiritual platform. There's no false ego at all on this pastime, other than Lord Brahma. But amongst the residents of Braj, there's no false ego. There's pure ego. Pure ego, what is that pure ego? That pure ego is nothing but pleasing to Krishna. A real ego is simply to please the will of the Lord. So every single one of these cows, coward boys, mothers, fathers, everyone, their only intention is to bring pleasure to Krishna. And Krishna's intention is to bring pleasure to them. It's called love. In this world, it's still a little, not a little, a lot self only. Even in marriage and relationships, it's still seeing things in relationship to me. This is mine. But actually everything belongs to Krishna. Prabhupada said one time, the only thing you can say is mine is Krishna. But that's on a higher level in terms of, reality. At our level, yes, we can say that. We can kind of think like that a little bit. And if you think like a child is yours, you look after the child like God practically. And similarly with the deities, Krishnas, you have the same mentality, doing everything for the pleasure of the deity. All one's, whatever form, attraction to the service of the Lord, we do everything for their pleasure. Or the service itself, preaching or cleaning or farming, but everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Working outside, marrying, family life, everything for the pleasure of Krishna, that's all. It's not about stopping what we're doing, it's about the way we see what we're doing, and the object or the purpose of why we're doing it. Okay, well, we'll finish there. Any questions? Let me put my spectacles on. Otherwise I can't see properly. Now I can see properly. Yes.
During your lecture you mentioned two different attitudes in Vrindavan. One was Krishna is mine, and the other one was I belong to Krishna. Could you a little bit elaborate on the difference between them and the different results from these different attitudes?
Different levels of love. Well, in Vrindavan, the mood is Krishna's mine. But in other levels of relationship with Godhead, when Aishvarya is there, reverence is there, then I belong to Krishna. You see yourself as Krishna's servant. Is in Vrindavan, they don't see themselves as Krishna's servant as such. They see that, in one sense, of course that's what they're doing. But that awareness creates a kind of a-separateness between you and the object of your service. I'm the servant, he's the master. But in Vrindavan, of course there are different levels there, the trees, and some of the non-moving living entities may not have that degree of conscious relationship. But to the coward boys and the mothers and the gopis, they all see that Krishna is their equal or their inferior in a sense. Mother Yasoda doesn't think of anything else but Krishna's welfare, but she's thinking she's the one who's actually, providing for Krishna. She's the one. If I don't feed him, he'll die. In the mood of, I'm the servant of Krishna. You can also say like that in a sense, I guess. But the mood is with reverence, that he's the master. But she doesn't think like that. Neither do the gopis. They think in terms of Krishna as their lover. He's my beloved. You know, when you have a relationship between a boy and a girl, you don't, you know, in a relationship, okay, say for instance the boy is you know, I don't know what, international football player. You know, the girl's just an ordinary girl. But, you know, when they're actually having the real relationship, they don't think like that. Doesn't enter in. She thinks, or let's say he's a high court judge or something. You don't think like that between husband and wife, or between mother and son. It's a different level of relationship. Totally different. Or if he's a, you know, head of the police force or something. Whatever it is, you know, the relationship is equal, intimate. So Vrindavan is, Madhurya is completely devoid of that Aishwarya mood. So on occasion, Krishna said he reveals it. Maybe some of the non-moving devotees have a little bit more of that mentality. I don't know too much about that. Certainly the ones that we're discussing here, they have none of that. Occasionally Krishna may reveal a little bit of that, but it's quickly, you could say, overwhelmed by the mood of Vrindavan. They simply love Krishna. There is no other condition. Pure love. Without any impediment. I mean, Krishna himself says that he's not so attracted by this reverential worship, but he's captivated by the spontaneous love of the residents of Vrindavan. That's why it's very rare to attain that level of prema. Very rare. Very rare. But at our stage, of course, we're trying to transform our perspective, our perception, our consciousness, from seeing ourselves as the master to seeing Krishna as the master. Even the pure devotees of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada, he, generally speaking, we don't see him relating with us in the mood of Krishna's mind, but rather we belong to Krishna, which is also true. But I'm not qualified to speak anymore on that. Anything else? Esther?
In that pastime, it seems that Krishna gave so much pleasure to his devotees. It must have been amazing, the exchange of love during this 1 year.
Yeah.
And Krishna was everywhere actually exchanging love with devotees.
Indeed. We can't imagine. I mean, we just don't have, I don't know, I don't think of any experience that can compare it with. I can't think of anything. I don't know. Maybe you can. I can't. But, yeah, the exchange of love is immeasurable. It's immeasurable. It's immeasurable. I mean, just to give an example which just flashed in the mind, I don't know if it's any value, I'm just speaking words, I have no realization, but, you know, it described how, why do they go, well, you could probably see it a little easier with the queens, but nonetheless, it's really with the gopis. Why do they dress the way they do? Why have they got certain colors that they have? Each and every individual has a various color to their complexion, different types of hairstyles, different types of flowers in their hair, and different earrings. Why do they do all these things? In the material world, girls may do that also to attract a boy. It's the same mentality in a sense, isn't it? It's perverted. In the spiritual world, they do it because they want to please, that they do what their heart dictates, but because they're only thinking of Krishna's pleasure, because it brings pleasure to Krishna. So they think that if I dress like this, Krishna's pleasure will increase. And then when Krishna's pleasure increases, their pleasure increases. And when Krishna sees that their pleasure increases, his pleasure increases. And it goes on unendingly, eternally like this, ever increasing happiness. So as you say, you can't, it's immeasurable. You can't say. We're just hearing a little kind of window, a little tiny description, but we cannot capture it, we can't experience it. As long as we're trying to measure it, as long as we're trying to capture it, we cannot. Krishna can only be captured by absolutely pure devotion. We can't measure these things. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said if we try to measure whatever is measurable, he said that's Maya. We can't measure the spiritual world. It's immeasurable. So what can we say? You have a fractional indication, but it's so much mixed with suffering in this world, isn't it? The suffering in separation in the spiritual world is an increase of ecstasy. Our experience in this world is not. It's actually unbearable and it's horrible. I mean, it's interesting, but it's just different because we're seeing it in our own, with ourselves in the center. A boy and a girl, when the girl disappears, especially the boy, the girl is just cannot bear it, you know. And sometimes when you're in love with someone, so-called love, you kind of all the time you're visualizing them wherever you go. You know, you can't focus on anything else. You're captivated, momentarily at least. In the spiritual realm, in Vrindavan, it's always like that, but it's totally different quality, totally different objective. The same thing is reflected in this world. But we can't experience this expansion into every form like this, and the love which is being reciprocated, and the tiny little drop, tiny sample. It's interesting how Prabhupada finished on this chapter. Brahma stealing the calves and the boys. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.